Welcome, everybody. Thanks again for joining me for another episode of Becoming the Greatest Physical Lover. I'm your host, Ellen Nicholas, sensuality consultant with Your Pleasure Incorporated. All these past weeks, I've been talking about all the ingredients that it takes to become a phenomenal lover. And most of the topics have been about consideration for your partner, respect, caring. And also, the most important thing is getting together with your partner with an attitude of giving. If you come to give someone your very, very best, then whatever happens is going to be a whole lot better than if you just go to take whatever you can. But this week, I want to talk about contraceptives and how they affect our sexuality. So there are many different contraceptives. And the bottom line is a contraceptive has to be effective, and it will only be effective if you know how to use it properly and if you take the time to use it properly. So let me just run through the different kinds of contraceptives that are very, very popular and some of the positives and negatives. So everybody knows about the pill. The pill is something that is pretty good with keeping a woman from getting pregnant. It does not protect her from STDs. And so if a woman is using the pill to protect herself from pregnancy, she also has to use a condom so that if her partner, who is not a steady lover, that if they've both been tested, they have to protect themselves from passing any kind of STDs. And obviously the pill does not do that. So that has to be considered. Also, another thing about the pill is she has to remember to take it every day, at least 28 days out of her cycle. And if she doesn't take it, then it's not going to be effective. And here she is thinking that she's protected and she's not protected. So it's something that has to be paid attention to. You have to get prescriptions regularly. You have to get a doctor to write a note for you. So for people who don't want to have to go through all of that, and especially for people who are not in relationships that are steady, it's not a steady relationship for you. The pill is not something that really does the best job of protecting you. Then there are a couple of insertables. One of them is a cervical cap. A cervical cap sort of looks like a beanie, and it fits like that. It fits right over the cervix. The pros and cons of the cervical cap, that is that number one, it has to be fitted by a doctor. And if it's not fitted by a doctor, you can't get it. Also, it has to be filled with spermicide. If it doesn't have spermicide in it, it won't work. If your lover is a little big and he bangs into it, he could actually dislodge it, and then it won't be effective. But the positives are that if you do put it in correctly, which is kind of a pain to put it in, but if you do put it in correctly, and you put the right amount of spermicide on it and in it, it can stay inside the woman for several days, like 3 to 5 days. So she doesn't have to think about contraceptive or protecting herself from pregnancy for a few days in a row. But again, if her partner is not someone that has been tested along with her, is not her steady partner, it does not protect from STDs. So there's that. A diaphragm is similar to a cervical cap, except it's considerably bigger, and it has like a suction form at the very top of the vagina. It kind of keeps every sperm from getting up and in. It has to have spermicidal jelly. It has to be fitted by a doctor. It can be kind of messy, and it can also be knocked to the side by a vigorous thrusting. So you have to really be careful with these contraceptives. Plus, it does not protect you, and protect you from STDs. And the whole thing about making love with contraceptives is that if you're worried that you're going to get somebody pregnant, it really does, or if you're worried that you're going to get pregnant, it really does affect your ability to enjoy the relations that you're having. So you have to be very responsible when you're using a contraceptive, and you have to use your brains and think about what you're doing. Be careful with what you're doing. And sometimes in the heat of the moment, the brains kind of take a second backseat to the loins. When genitals are calling the shots, that's when people can get pregnant when they don't want to get pregnant. One of the contraceptives that is becoming more popular, IUDs. I want to be clear about this. IUDs are not contraceptives, they're an abortive. So what happens is a doctor has to put it up past the cervix. It's not comfortable, and they push it up in, and it sits on the uterine wall, and it causes sort of like a low-grade irritation, so that every month when any sperm should make it up there and maybe join with an egg that's waiting, they can't implant themselves. The egg cannot implant itself on the wall of the uterus because of the irritation that the IUD has caused. And so the uterus rejects the beginning of beginning of life. It's not life yet, but the beginnings. So it's an abortive. It's painful to have put in. It has lots of cramping and all kinds of issues with it. And then you have to have it taken out by a doctor eventually, because if you want to get pregnant, you can't have it in forever. And then there's the most popular contraceptive of all, which are condoms. You got to remember, condoms come in many different sizes and thicknesses. So a lot of guys don't like condoms because they believe that it, numbs their senses. They're not really feeling as much. There are thinner condoms out there. Lambskin are excellent. But you have to remember that any kind of spillage over the top of the condom can get a woman pregnant. So if you're going to use a condom, again, make sure it's the right size for you. And when you're pulling out, hold on to it at the end so that the whole condom comes out with you, because that's not going to be safe, and it's not going to be effective if any spillage comes out. The most important thing to remember is that contraceptives are there for our protection, for your protection, for your life's protection, for your health. And they can be very effective in preventing unwanted pregnancies and to give you a sense of security in what you're doing. But you have to be really responsible in how you use them, because by themselves, they are not going to be effective if they are used incorrectly, and that will cause great angst. Sex is one of the greatest joys in the world, but it is meant for people who can be responsible. If you cannot be responsible, if you want to just play, or you just want to fuck and you just don't care, then you're really too irresponsible to have a sexual life. And you should, grow up a little bit before you actually start to think about having sex with anybody. Anyway, I hope that you have found any of this information useful. One more thing I want to say about condoms. They only have a shelf life of about 2 years. 2 years. So if you have a condom in your wallet and you've been carrying it around, they have an expiration date on the package. Check the expiration date out, because if it is older than 2 years, there are pinprick holes in that could easily allow sperm through, and she could get pregnant even though you're wearing a condom. So be super careful. Anyway, next week, the topic is going to be on having a relationship with a virgin, and what you should know and what you can know to make it, if the first time, a pleasurable, good time for both of you. Thank you so much for joining me. Make sure you do your Kegels every single day. And thank you for being here for another episode of the greatest physical lover. This is your host, Ellen Nicholas. Namaste. Be well and take care of yourselves. Bye for now.